You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, and you're not. I've got to start with the Padres firing Larry Rothschild as their pitching coach. For the rest of the season, their bullpen coach, Ben Fritz, will be their pitching coach. I've sort of touched on this in the past, but the Padres are in trouble. If the season ends today, they're out of the playoffs. You make all those moves that you made in the offseason, you've got to make the playoffs. I don't think anyone expects you to get past the Dodgers, but if you can make the playoffs, it's a successful season. Season ends today, the Padres are out. They're one game behind the Reds. The Reds are surging right now. 7-3 in their last 10. The Padres are free-falling. They're 2-8 in their last 10. You're running out of time to make any moves that will get you over the hump. Firing Rothschild was really one of the only things that the Padres could do. Now, it brings up the question, is this Rothschild's fault? Like everyone says, when a pitching coach is fired, or a hitting coach is fired, something like that, how much change is that really going to make? We're going to have to wait and see, but I'll tell you, Larry Rothschild is one of the most respected pitching minds in all of baseball. He's one of the few pitching coaches with managerial experience. He was the first manager of the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. He was Cubs pitching coach for a long time. He was Yankees pitching coach for a long time. It's not like he's some schmagegi. He had a real hand in what Padres pitchers were doing. I mean, look, sometimes the message gets stale. Sometimes you've got to change things up. The coach isn't getting through to players anymore. It's just not working out. And there's no question that Padres pitching on the whole has struggled. Outside of Joe Musgrove and Yu Darvish, who's hurt right now, and I'll throw in Dinelson Lamet, even though he barely pitched this year, Padres starters have struggled. Blake Snell has not been the pitcher that the Padres thought he'd be. He's 6-5 with a 4.82 ERA. He's only thrown 106 innings. He's not awful. From a lefty starter, I'm willing to live with an over 4 ERA, but when you compare that with what Snell has done in the past, realize in 2018, He won the AL Cy Young Award, and the Padres gave up a lot to get him. That's disappointing. Chris Paddock has been bad. Ryan Weathers has been bad. The Padres' bullpen has been really good, but a bullpen can only do so much. If the bullpen doesn't have a lead to protect, what good is the bullpen doing? Okay, it's keeping the game close. You're down 1, you're down 2, whatever. If you never get that lead, it doesn't matter. The reaction that I've seen in response to Rothschild being fired is kind of interesting. I've seen criticism of A.J. Preller. I've seen people saying that the players need to produce. It doesn't matter what's going on with the coaching staff. I've even seen some people say it's too late. It's August 24th. Why are you firing Rothschild now? On the point of players producing, you're not going to get an argument from me there. I mean, there's no question that guys like Snell and Paddock are better than what they've been this year. Chris Paddock had an excellent rookie season. He went 9-7 with a 3.33 ERA. That was in 2019. 2020, the 60-game joke, Paddock went 4-5 with a 4.73 ERA. You wrote it off as a byproduct of the 60-game farce. This year, though, 7-6 with a 5.13 ERA, that's not going to get the job done. We know that Paddock is better than that. Are there some pitchers that have great rookie seasons and then just flame out of baseball? Yeah. That list runs a mile long. But I think that Paddock is salvageable. I don't think he's going to flame out of baseball. I think he has what it takes to put it all together and to become a solid major league pitcher. Blake Snell, you know the type of pitcher he is. Like I said, former Cy Young winner. Dominant playoff pitcher. Someone who, when you first hear his name, you think he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. He's not pitching like it this year, I'll tell you that. How's this for a stat? Blake Snell is leading the majors in walks with 65. That's the most he's ever given up in a season. We're in August. We have over a month to go before the season's over. That number's gonna go up. If you want to get upset at guys like Snell and Paddock, that's fine, but you've got to get upset at the pitching coach too. If Snell and Paddock are struggling, it's up to Rothschild to fix it. He didn't. You want to tell me, well, those guys shouldn't struggle at all? Look at guys like Musgrove and Darvish. They're human beings. They're not perfect. Musgrove and Darvish are having great years. There's no question. But there's nothing wrong with needing a little help. I'm not asking Rothschild to turn S into Shinola. What I'm asking is for him to fix these really talented pitchers. He failed to do that. I mean, that's the job of the pitching coach. The job of the pitching coach is when a pitcher hits a rough patch to watch film and to figure out what's wrong and to correct it. Also to calm the pitcher down if he gets into trouble during the game, to give a scouting report on the pinch hitter. But mainly, if the pitcher has had a few bad starts in a row, you watch his mechanics, you watch his delivery, you watch his release point, and you figure out what's wrong with it. The reality is, pitching coaches do matter. There's only so much that a pitching coach can do, but even that little bit of help can make a big difference. I mean, I remember when Dave Island stepped away from the Yankees for a week or two. Mike Harkey took over as pitching coach. A.J. Burnett was useless. Island came back and said, yeah, I noticed some things wrong. We'll get that cleaned up. You know what? It actually got cleaned up. I mean, I don't want this to come off as I'm killing Larry Rothschild. I respect Rothschild. He's been in baseball for an incredibly long time. What did I say at the top? Rothschild is very well respected. He just didn't do a good job with the Padres. I think he'd tell you that. I mean, take a guy like Austin Adams, for example. Adams is a reliever for the Padres. From 2017 to 2020, he pitched in 41 games and only hit 2 guys. Adams has pitched in 54 games for the Padres this year. You know how many guys he's hit? 17. In 54 games, he has hit 17 batters. That's a record. That's actually a single season record among all relievers in baseball history. The modern single season record for all pitchers is 21. Kerry Wood and Tom Murphy share that honor. They both went deep into games. If you have a reliever on the verge of breaking the single season record for most batters hit by a pitch, you've got to look yourself in the mirror and say, what am I doing wrong? As to the notion of it's too late to make this type of a change, no, that's just wrong. It's doing Rothschild a little dirty, but the Padres are in the playoff hunt. If you really feel like Larry Rothschild is holding you back, and Ben Fritz can do a better job, make that change now before it's too late. You're only a game behind the Reds. God only knows where you're going to be in a week. Now it's salvageable. In a week or two, maybe it isn't. The notion that this is the wrong time to make a move or it's too late is just wrong. There's no other way to say it. When you've got a little over a month left in the season and you're just one game out of a playoff spot, yeah, you can make some changes. I'm okay with that. AJ Preller put together a rotation and a lineup, but we're talking about Rothschild, that was good enough to make the playoffs. And to make noise once they got there. Would they have gotten past the Dodgers if they had met in the NLDS? I don't know, but I'll say this. That would have been an epic 5-game series. Now, forget winning 3 games in the playoffs. The Padres are going to be lucky to win 1. This is a pitching staff that has a ton of talent. Musgrove, Darvish, Snell, Paddock, Melanson, Stammen, Pagan, Hill, Krismat, Johnson, Diaz. Very talented pitchers. After seeing how aggressive your GM was to add talent, for the Padres to be in this position is inexcusable. The reality is, Rothschild could just be the tip of the iceberg. If the Padres miss the playoffs, Jace Tingler could go. I understand that it's just his second year as a big league manager. And the Padres had a good year last year. They won the wild card series against the Cardinals. Tingler was the runner-up in NL Manager of the Year voting. But this was supposed to be the year that the Padres took a big step forward. If the Padres were firmly in the playoffs and they lost to the Dodgers in a 1-game playoff, okay, you can live with that. I mean, no one saw the Giants coming this year. So, for the Dodgers and Padres to meet in a 1-game playoff, that can be forgiven if you're Tingler. But if the Padres back into the playoffs and they lose to the Dodgers, that's a bad look for Tingler. And if I'm Preller, I've got to say to myself, hey, I've been aggressive in adding talent to the roster. I need to do that with my coaching staff. It wouldn't stun me if the Padres moved on from Tingler. All in all, firing Rothschild makes sense. If he wants, he'll be hired again. In the offseason, when other teams are looking for pitching coaches, Rothschild will be at the top of the list. It's also possible that Rothschild says, you know what, I'm 67, I have nothing left to prove, I'm going to retire. I mean, Rothschild has been in professional baseball since 1975. He really has nothing left to accomplish. He has 2 World Series rings. In 1990 with the Reds, he won a ring as their bullpen coach. In 97, he was the Marlins pitching coach. They won the World Series that year. I respect Rothschild. Whatever he decides to do will make sense. If he says, you know what, I don't want to go out like this, okay, I'll get it. If he decides to hang it up, I'll get it. But the reality is, Rothschild's message just got stale very quickly with the Padres. Unfortunately, sometimes that happens. It was the right decision for the Padres to fire Rothschild. Alright, now I'll give you some NFL Valk talk. Week 2 of the preseason concluded yesterday with the Saints narrowly beating the Jaguars 23-21. The Saints were up 23-3 entering the fourth quarter. The Jaguars scored 18 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. That is really impressive. The thing is, though, overall, this wasn't a comforting game if you're a Jaguars fan. I mean, you may be trying to rationalize it as, hey, we scored 18 unanswered fourth quarter points. We showed a lot of fire. We made the game interesting. We went 1-15 last year. That's a moral victory. I can live with moral victories. No, I'm not going to give you that. What's important to realize is that when you came back, you were going up against the Saints' third-string defense. You were going up against guys like Shaq Smith, Wynton McManus, and Deuce Wallace. If those guys were walking down Bourbon Street, they wouldn't be recognized. When the starters were going at it, the Jaguars looked awful. Trevor Lawrence really wasn't impressive. He went 14 for 23 for 113 yards. Not awful by any stretch, but it certainly didn't knock my socks off. I mean, here's what would take me off as a Jaguars fan. C.J. Beathard looked better than Trevor Lawrence. Forget the fact that Lawrence was going against the starting Saints defense and Beathard was going up against the Ham and Eggers. In terms of just the eye test, Beathard looked more comfortable. His passes were better. It looked like he was in more control of the offense. Beathard went 9 for 14 for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. So just to recap, Beathard completed 5 less passes, but threw for 8 more yards than Trevor Lawrence. I mean, I'm not asking Lawrence to be Mark Brunell overnight, but we've seen the 5 first-round rookie quarterbacks through 2 weeks of the preseason now. The one who has looked the worst is the first overall pick. I'm not saying that Trevor Lawrence is a bust. That is not what I am saying. But it's a little disconcerting to me that Lawrence hasn't looked better. You don't need me to tell you this, but Lawrence was the can't-miss prospect. The best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck, maybe since John Elway. This guy was supposed to hit the ground running. He doesn't need to be Patrick Mahomes overnight, but he's got to look just as good, if not better, as the other rookies. Through 2 weeks, Lawrence has not impressed me. Zack Wilson looked great in his 2 preseason games. Trey Lance did not play well against the Chiefs. Against the Chargers, he threw 2 touchdowns. Justin Fields is making a pretty strong case to be the Bears' starting quarterback week 1. He played really well against the Dolphins, and against the Bills, he was solid. He was put behind the 8 ball because the Bears were down a lot by the time he came in. I'm not going to ding Fields too much for that. The eye test, he looked solid. Mac Jones, in his 2 preseason games, has looked comfortable. He's looked in control of the Patriots' offense. With what's going on with Cam Newton right now, would it surprise you if Jones usurped Newton as the Patriots' starting quarterback? It wouldn't surprise me. Trevor Lawrence hasn't wowed me. If Zack Wilson and Justin Fields are going to have moments that make your jaw hit the floor, Trevor Lawrence should have those moments too. He hasn't. Again, I'm not calling him a bust. Okay? That would be ridiculous for me to say through 2 preseason games. But I just haven't been impressed with him. He can shut me up. When the Jaguars close out the preseason on Sunday against the Cowboys. And you know what? He can really shut me up if he balls out in the regular season. But as of right now, Zack Wilson looks like the better quarterback. Justin Fields looks like the better quarterback. 30 years from now, God only knows how we're going to rank these guys, but at this very moment, Wilson and Fields are ahead. Now I'll say this, Urban Meyer hasn't exactly helped matters. The offense looked stale. It was vanilla. It really wasn't exciting. If I have a quarterback with the skill set of Trevor Lawrence, I'm going to let him do his thing. I mean, I don't want to kill Urban Meyer. I like Meyer. I think he's going to do good things in Jacksonville. But if that's the offense that's on display once the regular season gets underway, Urban Meyer's going to run back to Fox. I mean, it's possible that he's just easing Lawrence into the offense. He doesn't want to put too much on his plate right away. But you have a generational prospect as your quarterback. The guy who you left a very cushy job at Fox to coach. I wouldn't handle him with kid gloves. I'd unleash the beast. If you need to shrink the playbook afterwards, okay. The transition from college to the NFL is insane. So if Lawrence can't handle everything right away, reel it back. Find a sweet spot. Then when he gets comfortable with that, introduce those things again. And then again, and then again. It just seems like you're handling him with kid gloves unnecessarily. Maybe you're keeping the offense hidden until the regular season. That's fine. That actually makes a little bit of sense. But if this is the offense that we see in week 1 against the Texans, you'll have a lot of ticked off people to deal with. As for the Saints Jameis Winston got the start, he looked excellent. Went 9 for 10 for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. He looked much better than he did against the Ravens. Same thing with Taysom Hill. He went 11 for 20 for 138 yards and a touchdown. From the eye test, Jameis Winston looked like the better quarterback. But I still think you're going to see a 2-quarterback system with the Saints. I'll be very curious to see how it works. If anyone can make that work, it's Sean Payton. I don't think the Saints are going to make the playoffs, but I'm actually excited about this 2-quarterback system. I like Taysom Hill. I think Jameis Winston can turn his career around. He got a little bit of a reset, getting to sit behind Drew Brees and learn from him. He had the laser eye surgery that corrected his vision. If that was really what was causing his struggles with the Buccaneers, okay, that shouldn't be an issue anymore. I think this can work. I'm going to be really interested to see how it shakes out. Moving on now to the Panthers, doing something that Joe Douglas should have done. That, of course, is signing Robbie Anderson to an extension. Specifically, a 2-year extension worth $29.5 million. That's $14.75 million per year. Anderson is getting more than $20 million guaranteed. This is a fantastic move. One of the few bright spots on the Jets from 2016 to 2019 was Robbie Anderson. Here's a guy who was undrafted in the 2016 draft. The Jets signed him as an undrafted free agent. They gave him a chance to make the team. He made the team. And from basically the word go, he dominated. He had a great preseason. That's what got him a spot on the 53-man roster. And once he was given a shot, once Eric Decker got hurt, you saw that he had a ton of talent. Here's a guy who was a homegrown Jet. It really looked like he could spend his whole career with the Jets and join the likes of guys like Don Maynard, Wesley Walker, Wayne Corbett, Al Toon, and Lavernius Coles on the list of best Jets receivers of all time. Unfortunately, idiot Joe Douglas let Anderson walk. He underestimated what Anderson would get on the open market. With the Panthers, Anderson dominated. He had 95 catches for 1,096 yards. That's right, Robbie Anderson was a 1,000-yard receiver last year. Meanwhile, who did the Jets get to replace him? Brashad Perryman, a guy who had 30 catches last year for 505 yards. Literally, not even half the player that Anderson is. After the trade deadline, Joe Douglas said that he regretted letting Anderson walk. Well, that's great, but what am I supposed to do with that? Okay, yes, the Jets wide receiver core now looks really good. Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, Jamison Crowder, Denzel Mims, Keelan Cole. It's stacked. There's no question. But maybe if Anderson is still a Jet, you don't sign Davis, and you can use that money on corners, on pass rushers, on linebackers. This is a great move by the Panthers. The Sam Darnold to Robbie Anderson connection is real. I do believe that part of the reason why Darnold struggled was the absence of Anderson. I said this last year, I'll say it again. The seminal reason that the Jets went 2-14 last year wasn't Adam Gase. It wasn't Sam Darnold. It was Joe Douglas's failure to construct a good roster. Part of that failure was letting Anderson walk and replacing him with Rashad Perriman. Outstanding move by the Panthers. Even if Darnold doesn't work out in Carolina, which I don't think he will, Anderson will still produce. He produced with Bridgewater. He'll produce with whatever quarterback is under center. If you can produce with Josh McCown, you can produce with anyone. I'm really happy for Anderson. He's an undrafted free agent that made it in the NFL. Very easy story to get behind. I'm really, really happy for him. Moving on now to the Packers, trading Kadar Holmen to the Texans in exchange for the Bears' 7th rounder in this coming NFL draft. And this move makes sense for the Texans. Holmen has some potential. Last year, he didn't play a lot. He only started one game, Week 10 against the Jaguars. In that game, though, he had a 61 overall grade. Not bad. Not great, but definitely not bad. Holman's young. He's going to turn 27 on the 18th. The Texans need a lot of things, and cornerback was definitely one of those things. Yes, Bradley Roby was really good for him last year, and they brought in Terence Mitchell from the Browns. But Mitchell isn't a world beater. You don't know how he's going to do in the Texan system. I like this trade. They're giving up nothing to get a corner with some potential. It's not an earth-shattering move by any stretch, but it makes a ton of sense for the Texans. They win this trade. I'll close this show out with some NBA Valk talk, specifically on the Celtics signing Josh Richardson to a 1-year extension worth $12.4 million. So Richardson is now signed through the 22-23 season. I like this move. I like Josh Richardson. I think he's a good player. Good mid-range shooter. Good defender. I always liked Richardson, even when he was with the Heat. The thing is, though, and I said this yesterday, what does this really get the Celtics? The Celtics are in NBA purgatory. You have two great players in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. If you want to tell me that Jaylen Brown isn't great, okay. I'm not going to die on that hill. I'll die on the Tatum hill, not the Brown hill. But you're surrounding them with a bunch of good to very good players. What's that going to get you? A playoff berth? Maybe you win a round? That's it. Look at that Celtics roster and tell me what their ceiling is. The second round of the playoffs. That's it. I've said this a million times. The Celtics were gifted a dynasty. They squandered it. Making the Eastern Conference Finals isn't enough. You've got to win an NBA Finals. The Brooklyn Nets are going to win an NBA title before the Boston Celtics. In fact, the Nets just beat the Celtics in the playoffs. How crazy is that? I mean, I'll tell you, if I did decades of dumbass decisions for the Boston Celtics, the winner would be squandering the haul that you got for Pearson Garnett. Okay, you hit on two of the picks, Tatum and Brown, no question. And you made 3 Eastern Conference Finals in 4 years. Impressive. Not enough, though. Firstly, you can't hit on just half the picks. You've got to hit on at least 3. James Young was a bust, and the 2018 pick, they traded for Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving's a net. Waste. The 3 Eastern Conference Finals berths in 4 years are impressive, no question, not enough. Nowhere near enough. If that's the Celtics' peak during the Tatum and Brown era, that's a failure. Make no mistake about it. I mean, the Josh Richardson signing makes sense. It's good for what the Celtics want to do, to maybe win a round in the playoffs. The thing is, though, what does that get you? It gets you a low pick, and you're left with no real way to add a superstar, except in free agency. But that's a crapshoot. Realize Gordon Hayward was supposed to lift the Celtics to new heights. That didn't work. Same thing with Kemba Walker. I really don't see a way for the Celtics to win in the near future. I mean, I can make the argument very easily that the best thing for the Celtics to do is to blow things up. Forget signing guys like Robert Williams and Josh Richardson to extensions. They're not going to win you anything. Maybe a round, but that's it. I mean, it's a big question in the NBA. Is it worth making the playoffs every year if you have no chance of winning? Would you rather blow things up, stink for a few years, and then you have the chance to build a dynasty? I'd love to know if the Celtics could package some of the guys not named Tatum and Brown for a third star. I don't know who that third star would be, But I feel like that's the only way the Celtics are going to win with Tatum and Brown. If they're not willing to do that, then blow the whole thing up. Until tomorrow, I'm Jacob Valk, and always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.